There's nothing Paul likes as much as receiving feedback about the Joy of Cruising podcast. You can now send him feedback via the message link on each episode. He can't respond, but he may read your text on air. Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. I am delighted to welcome this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast a special guest, Dixie Krystals, the Diva from Virgin Voyages, Scarlet Lady. I just met Dixie on my first cruise on Virgin Voyages, a transatlantic cruise from Miami to Barcelona, Spain. I experienced Dixie in several settings and always enjoyed her. What I didn't expect is, wow, can she ever sing? Dixie has a website, is on all major social media platforms, and has a podcast, Spilling the Tea with Dixie, where her About Me says Dixie has been dazzling audiences for 20 years. Dixie chats about her work in the Colorado LGBTQ plus community, her work in theater, reading, and baking. From www.dixiekrystals.com. Dixie Krystals has been dazzling audiences for 25 years. She grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania and always dreamed of having her name in lights. See where that got her? You can catch Dixie on Discovery Plus in Generation Glad, which is the 34th Annual GLAAD Award nominee for Outstanding Reality Show, as well as performing around Denver and beyond. Her live vocals and tremendous comedic talents are undeniable. She was trained in music theater, has worked for Walt Disney World, Princess Cruise Lines, Busch Gardens, and various regional theaters. Her passion for community is what drives her to excellence. She is an ordained minister, bingo queen, MC, and fabulous hostess with the mostest. She's won an award for her podcast, Spilling the Tea with Dixie, where she spills the tea on her life and worldly events. Dixie is currently entertaining on the high seas as the Diva aboard Virgin Voyages, Scarlet Lady. Welcome, Dixie, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Yes, thank you.
So how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. You know, I'm just strolling along right out here in the Mediterranean. I'm just doing fabulous. Life could be a lot worse.
I am so glad I ran into you on Scarlet Lady, and you were kind enough to not only let me take your photo, and now I kick myself though for not getting a photo together. And you seem kind of interested in being on my podcast, so thank you.
Absolutely, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for asking.
So after the cruise ship, this was the 14-day transatlantic to Barcelona. So we flew back home. Did you have time in Barcelona, or did you all have to leave right away?
We left later that evening, so we had pretty much the whole day to explore. It was one of those days of trying to just get caught up and get our bearings in Europe and stock up on supplies if we needed to do that. And then we came back, and because we usually leave port the same as we did in Miami, about 5:30.
So what was the itinerary coming back?
So let's see. We're staying based out of Barcelona, so we do 7-day voyages now. So week we did Italy. We went to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We went to some of France. We went to Spain, to more parts of Spain. This week we're going mostly to, it's very heavy in France. So we're going to Cannes and Marseille. And then obviously our overnights every week in Ibiza. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, the listeners probably wondering, we're just getting right into a conversation like we've known each other for years. Before we discuss your illustrious singing and comedy career and emceeing and performing on the ocean, tell our listeners about yourself in general. Where you're from, where you live, your professional background, anything you would like to share.
Absolutely. So I have been performing in drag for 27 years, but I've been in the world of entertainment since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. So many, many years I've been doing entertainment in general. I grew up in Pennsylvania in a very small town called Curwensville, which is very teeny tiny. And then I have made my way all across the country. I went to school in New York City, then got recruited by Disney. So I worked in Florida for a little bit. Then that's where I met my husband. And then we ended up, after about 10 years of me living in Florida, we moved to Denver because that's where he's originally from. So we've been there for about 15 years. So I've been all over the place. I think I've covered all 4 corners of the United States.
Now you mentioned drag.
Yes.
So differentiate for us drag and drag queen. You've done it for a while. So
yes,
talk
absolutely.
about your drag career.
Yeah, absolutely. So the art of drag is really just self-expression in the most extreme way possible when it comes to people representing themselves as a part of the queer community. There's so many different, drag started out many, many centuries ago. It's not something that's very new. It started, obviously back in the Roman times when people were portraying female and male parts in theater. So that's kind of where the birth of the word drag came from. And the word drag means dressing resembling a girl. And that's exactly what DRAG means. And so that's kind of the whole shtick of it. For me, it's a persona that I do. I'm an actor. So I'm acting. Are there bits and pieces of my normal self? Absolutely. Because I think all actors draw from their own personal experiences to be able to do that. But there's so many different facets of the drag community. So I lump it into the word drag entertainer. I don't really differentiate it between queens and kings because really anybody can participate. We have a lot of trans members of the community that still perform in drag, even though they are transitioning. We have some people that are assigned female at birth that also perform in drag, specifically in Denver. So I think drag in general is just really a self-expression art form to make everybody smile and just honestly be a little bit more fabulous.
Now you alluded to a career in entertainment before drag. Say something about that.
Yeah, so I've been doing musical theater my whole life. My father is a retired Methodist pastor, and so I grew up singing in the church. And I did that my entire teenage years into me going off to college. And I went to school for musical theater. So I've done a lot of musical theater. I used to work for Walt Disney World. I performed on Princess Cruise Lines exactly 20 years ago. This year, I got my first contract with Princess. And I was their lead male vocalist on the smaller ships that they had back in the early 2000s before they retired those. And so I've kind of done everything as far as that. And getting also to travel the world while singing and dancing and performing.
I've had several stand-up comedians on the show, and I have learned to always ask them if there was anything on their mind. So you are kind of a comedic performer. So before we go any further, what's on Dixie Krystals' mind?
Oh my gosh. Unfortunately, what's on my mind is politics. We are in an election year, and even though I'm removed from it, I'm very heavily involved with, a lot of different causes that are near and dear to my heart and helping a lot of nonprofits. And so it's just trying to help people navigate the waters and help people educate them on why it's so important to vote this every election, no matter whether it's presidential or local. Because not voting just means that it's hurting what we're trying to do as a democracy. So my thing is trying to help educate people just in my little format of doing it in drag. I volunteer with an organization in New York City that's called Drag Out the Vote. And so it's drag entertainers across the world trying to get people educated on the importance of voting, and they do that through the art of drag.
Very good. Um, let's talk about cruising. Um, Before you started performing on the ocean, had you
Yeah.
been a cruiser? Did you cruise?
No, I never went on one cruise in my life before ever joining my first ship.
Well, what were you
Yeah.
were you anxious at all about like seasickness or being away from home? Well, let me back up. Tell us how that happened. How did you get to
Yeah.
join your first ship? I guess you said it was Princess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my first trip with Princess, I was working as an entertainer at Walt Disney World, and two of my friends were dancers. And so they were looking for singers. And so they asked me to submit a VHS tape at the time, which I did. And then, like, about 3 weeks later, I got a phone call. They flew me to Beverly Hills. I auditioned for them in person. I sang one song. And by the end of the time of me leaving, I had a contract in my hand. So that was very nice. But yeah, I never cruised. I never thought about it. I never thought of it as an option, as just as a person. And then when the opportunity arose, it was like all the fears of like seasickness. That was the biggest thing for me. And like being in the middle of the ocean and there's no land around. What happens in an emergency?
But you got over it pretty
Yeah.
quickly, sounds like.
Yeah, I did. And the first year that I was on my Princess voyage was the 4 hurricanes that hit Florida back to back to back to back in 2004. And so I got to learn real quick what it was like to be on a ship.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that you started as a vocalist because when I went to see you at various venues on Scarlet Lady, I was shocked. I don't know why, but the first time that you sang, I was blown away. I was just thinking that you were kind of, you were funny and a show person, but then you sang a song. I said, "Oh wow, she can sing."
I appreciate that. That means I'm doing my job right.
But clearly, now let me ask you this: on that first cruise, did you get hooked right away, or did it have to grow on you?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it was a different time then because there were no cell phones at that point in time. So I was really disconnected, and I had been with my husband at that point for about 5 or 6 years. And so, to be in that atmosphere of not being able to call home, and I was relying on calling cards on the ship, and it was just a very different time. So I was very hesitant about it every time I went back. I'm like, is this the last time? But then I did it 9 times. I did 9 contracts with them. So we just kind of got used to it.
And staying with the cruising life, then came Virgin Voyages. So before I ask you how did you get involved with them, say something about in the short time that they've been around. This was my first Virgin Voyages cruise, but obviously I follow intently the cruising business and very early on, I identified, or the cruising audience identified divas with the cruise line. That just caught on and became a brand mark right away. Say something about the diva role on Virgin Voyages.
Yeah, absolutely. So the diva role with Virgin is really an interesting concept. So the top 2 tiers of what's called the happening cast are the diva and then the hostess. And so we replace the normal cruise staff on any other cruise lines. But we do that through entertainment and song and things of that nature. So the diva's role is basically to kind of be the social butterfly of the ship, for lack of a better term. And so it takes over that cruise director role of making sure everyone's having a good time while also entertaining them, making sure that they are going to come back again, help them with whatever they might need if they have a problem, if they love something, encouraging them to speak up about it. And I think that is what it is. It's all about freeing yourself. And a lot of people come here with a preconceived notion of what a diva is because we've heard the term in life for a very long time. And that can sometimes come off very negative, but then they'll meet me and they're like, "You're not a diva at all." I'm like, "No, that's just my title. Like, I am the diva. I'm the drag diva on board, but I'm certainly not a diva. I'm not here to, to do anything, out of the extraordinary for, whatever I need." But it's just, for me, it's all about, honestly, the way I approach the role is how many people am I going to make happy, smile, introduce them to the art of drag for the first time, but in a respectful way that's not going to be off-putting or make anybody uncomfortable. Because I understand that some people, their wives have booked this voyage for them and they have no clue what the entertainment is on the ship until they get here. And I can see that in some people's faces. It doesn't happen very often, but now that the brand is getting bigger with more ships, that's going to happen a lot more.
I'm doing a reflections podcast about the cruise, and somewhere, I can't remember the context I use it, and I say Virgin Voyages is not for everyone.
Correct.
But then I add that, I literally have never heard a negative review of Virgin Voyages. Those things, both things can be true.
They can.
So talk about the diva role being offered to you. How did that happen, and how's it going?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2021, when they were coming back from COVID, because obviously they hadn't launched the Scarlet Lady at that point because she was still making her way over from Europe to launch, and then the world shut down. So I had a friend of mine that I used to work with at Disney that was their new casting director. And I saw it pop up and I thought, oh, that sounds kind of cute. And I knew the original diva, Tora. And so she's like, yeah, go. She's like, they're changing the role from what I did, apply for it. You'd really love it. So I applied for it. And then they flew me out to Vegas like 3 weeks later to do an in-person interview process. So I took all my drag with me. I took an overnight bag, and luckily I'm in Denver. So that to Las Vegas is pretty quick. And we just sat in a room and talked. And they talked about what the diva role was. Okay, sorry about that.
No, I understand. I have calls around the world all the time. So, well, you're in Barcelona. Yes, I forgot. I'm thinking you're in Vegas because you're in Barcelona.
That I am.
Yeah. So you were talking about the interview process.
Yes, and so when I went to Vegas, they. About a month later, they called me back and they said, well, we're going to change the role. We want to see you again. So I flew back and I sang some songs for them. And then it kind of came to the process of them doing the hiring. But I couldn't do it at that time because I had already taken some other work with my agency. So fast forward to...
Were you in, when you sang the songs, you did that in full costume?
Yep. So I was dressed as everything, and they had me read a few things of the script that they had at the time. And then I sang one song because they had already seen all of my other stuff on social media. And then after all that happened, it just didn't work out with my calendar to be able to do it, just because I had other obligations with my agency. And then fast forward to 2023, the end of it. And in like October, well, they called me in July of last year and asked if I'd be interested in coming as the diva. So we had a Zoom call. I read a little intro piece that they had with the casting team and a couple of the vice president of entertainment. And then like 24 hours later, I had an offer in my inbox.
Great.
Yeah.
So how are you enjoying it?
I love it. I'll tell you, I say I have the best job on this ship besides the captain.
It doesn't look... I'm sorry. I was going to say, it doesn't appear that you are on your first contract.
No.
And as they say, you're not new to this.
Exactly. Yes. And after talking with a lot of people, they're just so surprised when I tell them that this is my first Virgin contract. And I'm like, well, this is stuff that I do every day, all day long. So it's nothing new or different to me. It's just that I'm in now an enclosed environment with new people every week.
So do you perform at? I understand Virgin stops at Bimini, and do you ever perform at any of the ports, or solely on the ship?
Solely on the ship. There are a few times that I have done not with a Virgin, but I've booked gigs myself at like a brunch, like Ibiza. We're here during their Pride Festival in 3 weeks, so I booked an outside gig to work a nightclub there. My agency got me. So yeah, it's nice to be able to do those things and still keep up with my normal life at home.
Great. Your www.dixiekrystals.com mentioned some familiar names. Walt Disney World, you kind of alluded to them. Princess, I know you worked on. Busch Gardens, various regional theaters. Say something about things that you did at those venues.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started working at Walt Disney World, I was a character entertainer and I danced in the 25th anniversary parade and did some of the castle shows and shows that people would have seen, did a lot of the parades that were televised for Christmas and Easter. And then as I worked my way through Disney, I got hired as a professional vocalist as the years went on, and I got to work with as one of the Voices of Liberty at Epcot, which is in the American Pavilion, an a cappella group. So I for a couple of years. At Busch Gardens, when I came back from working on Princess, I just wanted to have something part-time. So I happened to come back during the holiday season. So I opened 2 new Christmas shows with Busch Gardens in Tampa. And then I ended up staying on for another 3 months to start. They did like a Jersey Boys style show called Rock-a-Doo-Wop. And so I stayed on to join that show for a little bit as well. I've worked in a lot of different regional theaters, equity houses. I'm a member of Actors Equity. I've done Alban from La Cage aux Folles. I just did it last year for the 3rd time. That's one of my favorite musicals is La Cage aux Folles. So, I mean, honestly, I've dabbled in a little bit of everything.
Now, I know the COVID shutdown obviously impacted cruising, but I'm sure it impacted your performing career significantly. Don't want to spend too much time on that because it's such a downer, but I'm always interested in how people dealt with it. Did you do anything special, run a marathon, learn some new skills? How was it? And then how did you return to performing?
So here's the crazy part. I stayed booked and blessed during COVID, thanks to Zoom and digital platforms, because a lot of my clientele are all corporate clients. And so they ways to engage their employees while working at home. So I would join a Zoom of 10,000 people, and it would be me playing bingo in my living room or in my home office. And I was doing happy hours. I work with a marketing agency and they're all over the world. So I'd wake up at 1 a.m. so that I could be live in China or live in Australia doing a happy hour. And we would do trivia. We did bingos. I did online drag shows where I would just turn on the computer and just sing for like 2 hours straight on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, all of those things. So I really... and everybody, no one else wanted to do the whole digital drag thing, but I embraced it immediately. I got the whole setup for it. It was all in my basement. Like within a month, I was up and working just because I can't sit still. And I was just like, if this is going to be a thing that hangs around for a while, I'm just going to make something out of this, and which was very nice. So then I helped other entertainers get their setup at home, sent them all the links and like, this is what you need. This is what you need to do. And then all of a sudden, the whole digital drag phenomenon took over. It was wonderful.
Now you talked about how much of your work was corporate, and then drag. That almost seems like an oxymoron.
It does. Well, they hire me as the drag entertainer to entertain their employees.
Oh, I understand what they do, but it just seems like with the political environment in the country, I'm surprised to hear that.
I
would not have guessed that that's your predominant audience.
No, some of my best clients that I have for like Pride season and the holidays and any of the holidays around the World AIDS Day and National Coming Out Day, I get hired by a lot of companies that have diversity groups within the bigger organization, and they bring me in and I'll teach them about drag and the art of drag and what it is to be a drag entertainer. I'll go in and I'll perform. Sometimes I'm just hired to come in and do bingo. I'll do trivia. I'll host a happy hour for them and sing live. So it's really all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to hear because, I know in some places, diversity is kind of being pushed to the side. So how did you return to the real world? Well, I shouldn't say the real.
Yeah. The new
return to
world.
performing in person?
Yeah, so I host a lot of brunches in Denver, and at the time we were coming back safely. So I would literally be the only person working in the bar with the chef and the owner, and we did drive-through drag. So people could drive past the bar and get to-go food, and they could have little pouches of and I would just be there. I had a mask on, everything, and I would just take it from the kitchen out to their car, and they would drive through the alleyway, roll down their window. I would money and throw their food and drink in the window, and away they went.
Wow. Dixie, promote yourself. Talk about spilling the tea with Dixie.
Yes, so I started a podcast because people are always so interested about my stories because I have such an interesting upbringing and I just have done a lot in my life. And so people are always like, when they would talk with me, they're like, you just need to start a podcast. And so I did. And it was really just me talking nonsense of what was on my mind, what was happening in the world, what I felt about it, and just really kind of like dishing on all those things. And then I started incorporating friends of mine as guests and just kind of talking about real life things because I find I'm a podcast person where I would rather hear somebody rant about something or talk about something interesting for short snippets of time rather than a long,
Mm-hmm.
like, unless it's a series of things. And I'm like, okay, good, I'm hooked. Let's do this. I was like, okay, well, there's things on my mind almost every day. So let's collect those thoughts and put them into a podcast. So I started doing that. And it, people were like, oh, great, we love catching up on you. And when I haven't done some in like months, and people are like, okay, so when's it happening? You're on the boat, you're settled in. Can we get another podcast?
Yeah, I'm anxious to listen to your podcast about your reflections of being the diva.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. My Mitchie and I are going to do a podcast together talking about what it's like to be the diva and the hostess on board.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
well, I can't wait. But in the meantime, listeners and fans can hear the diva on the Joy Cruising podcast.
Right
I believe it's
here.
I believe it's May 27th or May. Let me look real quick. Yep, May 27th.
Love that.
So, any tours, performances, or events you would like to tell our listeners about?
Yeah, I mean, I have two television series that are out. One is on HBO Max called Generation Drag. We were nominated for a GLAAD Media Award in 2023. Actually, a year ago, last month, we were nominated. And it's basically a docuseries. Before COVID, I got introduced to a nonprofit organization called Dragutante,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked take the lead of that and help them. And it's basically drag youth wanting to get into the art of drag, and we would prepare them. We would put them with mentors in the community. We did a whole evening where it was just them living their best fantasy, having makeup tutorials, having, costumes made for them, lip syncing. And then we threw this huge ball at our arts complex in Denver. And so parents and friends and family could come and support the kids. And then all the money went back to the nonprofit. So I was actually shooting a pilot for another television show, and the producer was like, "Where are you running off to?" And I said, "Well, I have to go do this thing. It's called Draguton. I'm hosting it tonight, yada yada." And he's like, "Oh, he's like, let's talk about it." So about 3 weeks after that, I sat on a Zoom call with like 5 other of his producer friends, and they were like, "Oh, this is something collectively that we would love to be able to pitch, create a reel, and sell it to, somebody, a producer, an organization, whatever that might be." Well, it just so happens they sold it to Tyra Banks' company, Bankable Productions. She's the one who bought it. And then we shot it for Discovery Plus back in 2021 over the course of about. So it's just 6 episodes of docuseries, and it goes through these kids. It follows their lives across the country. There are some in Denver, but others are in other states. And it just kind of chronicles the struggles that they go through with as a family, as an individual. We had some of the youth that are also in the process of transitioning, so it talks about a lot of that. So it was kind of on the forefront of putting that out into the world and just kind of educating people on what it is to be, young and queer and being in those safe spaces. So it's a really, and I'm glad limelight that it needed. And it's just a fabulous thing. And now Disney has purchased, HBO Max because that got bought by Disney. So it's like this trickle effect. So more and more people are going to be able to see the show, which is fantastic.
So that's airing. I can get that now.
Yes, it's available now. It's 6 episodes.
And you're on camera in all the episodes?
Yes, I'm featured in all but probably 2 of the episodes.
Okay. Great, great. Well, I know what I'm going to be doing in the next few days.
Yes.
So how can listeners follow you on social media and the internet?
Absolutely. Social media, they can find me on Instagram. I have Facebook. I've got TikTok. I've got all the things. I have a YouTube channel that has some videos on there of past performances, singing, a demo reel. That also to go to my website, dixiekrystals.com, and there's merchandise, events. If people are interested in meeting me to their event, they can fill out a form that comes to me. I love engaging with people on social media, so I tend to go live a lot, specifically on Instagram, just because those are the 2 platforms where I have the most followers of Dixie. A lot of my family is what I have on Facebook. I tried to keep that kind of just family and close friends. Everything else is, it's all under my handle of Dixie Krystals, so I'm easy to find. I'm usually the first Dixie Krystals that pops up everywhere.
Great, great. Well, Dixie, but before we let you go, and I know you're very busy because people don't know you're the diva right now. I guess you guys are on a bit of a port stop. No, this is Barcelona, so you leave this evening, right?
Second week. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. But before we let you go, a couple of real quick, what I call fun cruise questions, and perhaps a fun, what I call oddball question, because it's not really not necessarily cruising related. So the first one's an easy one, just so I can get some ideas. What are your favorite cruise drinks and cruise food?
Oh, my drinks obviously are always going to be the espresso martini, especially on board Virgin. They make the best espresso martini. I love that. And
had one on the ship.
I love a good glass of Moet. Those are my 2 go-tos on the drinks. My food, oh gosh, I have 2 favorite restaurants. My first favorite is Pink Agave, which is Mexican infused. I love everything on that menu. And my second favorite restaurant on board is Razzle Dazzle, which people don't realize it used to be the only vegetarian restaurant at, and then started incorporating meat menu items there about a year. Most delicious menu.
Great. Yeah, I enjoyed them both multiple times. What's your most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I think the one memory that sticks with me is there was a couple here in February. They had just gotten married at the age of 80 and 85.
Wow.
And you would never know it. It was both of their second marriages. They both lost the loves of their life during COVID, and then they reconnected after being high school sweethearts many moons ago. And they were just here. They were with you on the transatlantic crossing, and then they were just here last week as well. And
wow.
Everywhere on this ship. In the middle of the pool in the morning, I would be walking to the gym at 8 a.m. and they're standing on the pool deck, just dancing, holding each other in their arms and dancing to the music outside.
Oh, wow.
I would go around the ship when I met them in February. I always saw them dancing. So I always called them my dancing diva. And so last voyage was their last one with us, and they were here for a month total. And they were just so shocked that I remember that. But I told that story during my cabaret because it's just, it's one of those stories that's like love never dies. Mm-hmm. It's always there. It may come in different forms to people and it may mean different things to you. But I mean, that was certainly a love story that was absolutely meant to happen. And that's my biggest memory on this track so far.
Wow. What a story. And, that conveys to people, a lot of people think of Virgin as for a younger crowd. What could be better than a story of an 80 and 85-year-old sharing their, what was it, their honeymoon, or it's just
celebrating their honeymoon with us?
Yep. Wow.
And on in February is when they booked the transatlantic crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're very.
The last question, the oddball question. I know some of your social media following is listening. So welcome to the many Dixie Crystal fans. We certainly hope you have enjoyed listening to the Joy of Cruising podcast, and we'll come back to listen to additional episodes. And follow the Joy of Cruising podcast on our Facebook group and on IG. Dixie, share one thing that my listeners and your fans don't know about Dixie Crystals.
Oh gosh, I'm an open book. What don't they know about me? Oh gosh, that's a hard question. What don't they know about me? They don't know that I'm an introvert.
Hard to believe. Coming from another introvert, and off the wall, off the charts introvert. Hard to believe you are an introvert.
Yes, I have a very hard switch. When I have to turn it on, it's at full volume. And when I get the chances to turn it off, it is completely off.
Wow. Interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And Dixie, thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. I'd like to think that I can say I am the first cruise podcast in the world to host the Diva. So
I think you are, because I've researched it, and you are.
There you go. I love to hear that. Well, Dixie, all the best in your career. And as I like to say, we will see you on the ocean.
Love it. Thank you so much.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.